Everyone at the shooting range laughed at her old, beat-up rifle. They called it a museum piece. But when Danielle Foster pulled the trigger, the room went dead silent. Ever feel judged before you even speak? That's exactly how Danielle Foster felt the moment she stepped into Sun Valley shooting range. No fancy gear, no swagger, just a quiet woman in worn-out sneakers, a soft green backpack, and an old bolt-action rifle that looked like it belonged in a history book. The smirk started before she even fired a shot. But what happened next? Nobody saw it coming. It was just past noon when Danielle Foster stepped into the Sun Valley shooting range in Mesa, Arizona. The sun outside was relentless, but inside the range it was cooler, tinged with the sharp scent of oil and gunpowder. The air snapped with gunfire from downrange, echoing like a storm inside concrete walls. Most people minded their business, focused on targets. But a few heads turned when she walked in. She wasn't what they expected. Danielle didn't wear tactical boots or flashy gear. No slick rifle case, no camo hat, no custom ear protection, just a plain grey hoodie, old sneakers, and a faded green backpack slung over one shoulder. She looked more like someone running errands than someone here to shoot. And yet, the glances, they were everywhere. Some were subtle, raised eyebrows, sideways looks. Others weren't so polite. A tall man in a baseball cap leaned toward his buddy at the counter and whispered just loud enough, "New girl brought a museum piece." They both laughed. Danielle heard them. She always heard people like that. She just never gave them what they wanted. She moved quietly to the far end of the range and unzipped her backpack. What came out was unexpected. An old bolt-action rifle, the kind most people hadn't seen outside of war movies. Worn wood, no chrome, no paint, just grit and age. It looked like it had survived battles, and maybe it had. She didn't say a word, just began loading bullets one by one, hands calm and precise, like it was second nature. And it was. Because while they saw an ordinary woman, what they didn't know was what that rifle meant and who she really was. Danielle Foster had barely loaded her rifle before the whispers started. They didn't even try to hide it anymore. A woman in a tight tactical vest nudged her friend and said, "Think she even knows what she's doing?" Her friend smirked, maybe watched a YouTube tutorial before coming here. More laughter. Danielle didn't flinch, didn't turn around. She'd been in rooms far more dangerous than this, places where judgment came fast and bullets faster. What were a few smug stares compared to that? She exhaled slowly and took her first shot. Crack! The bullet ripped through the air, clean, sharp, and buried itself dead center in the bullseye. No drama, no announcement, just precision. Most people didn't even notice. But one guy did. A cocky man in a red flannel shirt, maybe mid-20s, walked by grinning like he owned the place. He leaned over, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Nice shot, Grandma." Snickers followed. Danielle didn't blink. She loaded another round, slower this time. Squeezed the trigger. Another bullseye. Clean, surgical. Behind her, the range manager, a short, stocky man with a clipboard, looked up from his desk. He noticed the small gathering forming around lane 12. Danielle's lane. Adjusting his cap, he walked over, wearing a practiced grin. "You new here?" he asked, loud enough for the others to hear. Danielle gave a small nod. "First time?" He pressed again, like he couldn't believe it. Then he chuckled and said, "We're holding a little friendly contest today. You're welcome to join, just for fun." But his smile said something else. "We don't expect you to win." Danielle clicked the safety on her rifle and leaned it gently against the wall. She looked him straight in the eye and replied with quiet confidence, "Maybe." And just like that, the crowd leaned in. They thought she was the joke. But the punchline was coming. The clipboard felt heavier than it should have. Danielle Foster stood there for a moment, pen in hand, staring at the contest sign-up sheet like it was a door she wasn't sure she wanted to open. Her name would be last, just under a list of regulars, all men, all confident, the kind who talked more than they listened. She hadn't entered any competition since she left the military. And even then, they weren't for trophies, they were for survival. Her fingers gripped the pen a little too hard. She could hear them behind her. Jason, the flannel shirt loudmouth, laughed with his friends. "Bet she can't even hit the side of a barn," he said. He didn't bother to lower his voice. Danielle didn't turn around. She just pressed the pen to the paper and wrote her name, Danielle Foster. "You sure about that, ma'am?" the manager asked, a little amused. Danielle met his eyes. I'm sure. He shrugged, polite but unconvinced. All right, we'll call your name when it's your turn. Good luck. She didn't need luck. Danielle returned to her booth. She picked up her rifle, checking every bolt, every scratch, like a surgeon prepping before an operation. She wiped the scope with a soft cloth and tightened her glove straps. The buzz of the range grew louder as more people signed up. The sound of conversation, reloading, and mild boasting filled the air. But then, beside her, a soft voice broke through the noise. An older woman, her grey hair pulled back in a braid, stopped at the neighbouring lane. She looked at Danielle and asked gently, "You any good, honey?" Danielle gave a quiet smile. Used to be, the woman chuckled. Sometimes used to be is just sleeping, not gone. Danielle tucked those words away like a small charm. And then the intercom buzzed. All right, folks, gather up. Contest is starting. People stretched like they were about to enter a boxing ring. Targets were replaced. Guns were polished. But Danielle wasn't there to fight. She was there to remember who she used to be and who she still was. The crowd circled around the firing lanes, eager for a show. You could feel the tension, like the air had been cranked a few degrees warmer. Laughter echoed. The smell of gunpowder lingered. It was time. Jason Weller, you're up. The worker in the navy range shirt called out. Jason, Mr. Red Flannel himself, cracked his knuckles and flashed a cocky smile toward Danielle. Watch and learn, sweetheart, he said, loud and smug. He strutted up to the firing line like it was a stage built just for him, spun his semi-automatic rifle like a baton, showing off for the small crowd of regulars who already expected him to win. His buddies hooted and clapped. The challenge was 5 shots, fast-moving targets, points for speed and accuracy. Jason fired, rapid, sharp, bang, 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 bang. His shots were solid. He didn't miss much. The crowd clapped louder. That's how it's done, one man shouted. Clean shooting, another said. Jason grinned, high-fived his friend, and strutted back like a hometown hero. He passed Danielle's bench, gave a mock bow, and said, Don't worry, I'll give you some pointers after you miss everything. Danielle didn't answer. She was too busy cleaning her barrel again. Wiping it carefully, checking the chamber, adjusting her scope, her calm unnerved him. He paused for just a second, watching her with curiosity, but then shrugged it off, turning to laugh with his boys again. More shooters stepped up, a few decent, 1 or 2 pretty good, but no one turned heads, not until they called the final name. Danielle Foster, you're up. The sound in the room dropped, not silent, but close. People leaned forward, phones tilted slightly upward, maybe to record what they assumed would be a fail. Danielle stood slowly. She picked up her rifle like it was just part of her. No dramatic gestures, no hype, just muscle memory and purpose. As she stepped toward the firing line, you could feel it, the moment before a storm. Because what no one realized was that she wasn't nervous at all. She was ready. Danielle Foster approached the firing line with steady, unshaken steps. She didn't carry her rifle like a burden. She carried it like an old friend. The concrete floor tapped beneath her boots, quiet and rhythmic, as if time itself had slowed to watch. She could feel all their eyes. Jason leaned back, arms crossed, ready to watch her fail. His friends elbowed one another, barely holding in their grins. Bet she doesn't even know how to load it, one of them snickered. Another mimicked a clumsy drop, pretending to fumble a rifle to the floor. Danielle ignored them all. She placed her rifle gently on the rest, adjusted the scope with exact precision, then took her stance. Perfect form. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't flashy. It was automatic, like a switch had flipped in her body, and she was no longer just Danielle in a hoodie. She was someone else now. 5 shots, the range official reminded her. Moving targets. You ready? Danielle nodded once, then breathed in through her nose and exhaled slowly. Target 1 zipped from left to right. Crack. Bullseye. Target 2 shot up diagonally. Crack. Bullseye. By the 3rd shot, the room was dead quiet. The jokes gone, the smirks disappearing fast. Phones were lowered. Arms uncrossed. People leaned in. 4th shot. Crack. Direct hit. 5th and final. Crack. Center mass. Clean. Danielle clicked the safety, stepped back, and slung her rifle over her shoulder like she'd just finished tying her shoes. No fist pumps, no head nods, just stillness. The scoreboard lit up. Highest score of the day. Nearly perfect. The manager's voice cracked slightly as he said, Looks like we have a new leader." Jason stared at the screen, jaw hanging open. His buddies suddenly found their phones very interesting. Danielle sat down on the bench, quiet, composed. Her hands rested calmly in her lap. The same people who laughed at her. Now, they didn't know what to say, and she wasn't about to explain herself, because for Danielle Foster, her shots had already done the talking. After Danielle's last shot echoed through the range, a strange stillness settled in. It wasn't fear. It wasn't awe. It was something in between, a room full of people realizing they'd made a mistake. The kind of silence that wraps around your ego and squeezes. Danielle didn't react. She didn't soak in their stares or flash a smirk. She just sat back down on the bench, legs crossed, rifle resting calmly against the wall beside her like it had nothing left to prove. Jason sat stiffly near the lockers, arms folded tight. His mouth was set in a line, but his eyes, those eyes kept flicking over to her like he was trying to solve a puzzle that shouldn't be this difficult. One of the women who had laughed earlier, the one in the tactical vest, now stayed quiet. She didn't even reload her weapon, just stood with her arms folded, avoiding Danielle's gaze. And then, something unexpected. A woman in a pink camo cap, someone Danielle hadn't even noticed before, walked over with 2 coffees in hand. Her steps were cautious, almost respectful. "Want one?" she asked shyly, offering the cup. Danielle looked up, surprised for the first time all day. She smiled softly and shook her head. "Thanks, but I'm good." The woman nodded quickly and backed away, her face turned red. She hadn't offered coffee to anyone else. Meanwhile, the final contestants stepped up. A few took their shots, but nobody came close to Danielle's score. Every miss made the room feel heavier, like the weight of every assumption they'd made was starting to sink in. Some tried to play it cool, pretending it didn't matter. But others glanced her way, sneaking looks like maybe, just maybe, they'd judged her wrong. When the last shooter finished, the scoreboard blinked one final time. Danielle Foster, first place. The manager walked back out, clipboard in hand. His voice had lost its teasing tone. "Looks like our winner today is Danielle Foster." He clapped once. A few others joined, unsure whether to cheer or apologize. Danielle stood slowly, walked over, and accepted a small trophy and a gift card, like they were grocery receipts. No pride, no need, because she didn't come to win. She came to remember who she was. Danielle tucked the trophy and the gift card into her green backpack like they didn't matter, because to her, they didn't. Trinkets. She wasn't here for applause. She didn't need anyone's approval. But some people still couldn't accept what they saw. From the back of the room, a voice mumbled just loud enough. She must have gotten lucky. It wasn't Jason this time. It didn't matter who said it. Danielle paused. She turned just slightly, eyes calm but cutting, and said in a clear voice that carried across the concrete and cordite, "Luck doesn't group shots like that." Her tone wasn't angry, it wasn't loud, but it cut sharper than any bullet in that room, and nobody responded. Jason looked up at her again. The swagger was gone now. Just confusion, maybe even a little respect buried beneath the bruised ego. As the crowd thinned out, Danielle took her time. She cleaned her rifle slowly, deliberately. Her fingers moved with care, not ceremony, just discipline. A ritual she hadn't let herself forget. She tightened the strap, checked the scope one more time, and packed it away like she'd done hundreds of times before. The whispers were gone now. The room was full of quiet nods and sideways glances, not the mocking kind, the kind people give when they've just seen something they weren't ready for, something they might not understand, but can't deny. Jason lingered by the lockers, pretending to dig through his bag, but really just trying to work up the nerve. Eventually he walked over. "You military?" he asked. His voice didn't carry the arrogance it had earlier, just curiosity. And something like guilt. Danielle didn't look up. She zipped her bag, then answered, "Something like that." He hesitated, then added, "You shoot like someone who's done this a long time." This time, Danielle looked him in the eye. Long enough. Jason opened his mouth, maybe to ask about her service, maybe to apologize, but something in her gaze told him, "Don't dig." "Good shooting," he said instead, backing off. Danielle nodded once. Not out of pride, just acknowledgement. Some lessons don't need to be explained, they just need to be heard. Danielle finished packing up her gear without rush, like time didn't own her anymore. Near the wall, the older woman who had spoken to her earlier, the one with the grey-streaked braid, offered her a small wink as Danielle passed by. "Told you," she said softly. "Sleeping, not gone." Danielle allowed herself the smallest smile, not for show, for herself. A smile that meant, yeah, maybe she was right. Outside, the Arizona sun was brutal. The heat shimmered off the parking lot like the air was made of water. But Danielle didn't flinch. She welcomed the heat. She had seen worse. She walked across the pavement to a beat-up blue Honda Civic. Nothing special. The kind of car no one would look at twice, just like her. But behind that steering wheel sat someone who once waited through sandstorms for orders that never came. Someone who'd watched brothers fall beside her. Someone who learned how to hit targets so far away most people couldn't even see them. She didn't need a spotlight to feel whole, she just needed a lane and a clear shot. As she opened the car door, a voice called out behind her. It was the manager, jogging slightly, clipboard still in hand, sweat gathering at his collar. "Ma'am, Danielle." She turned slightly, one eyebrow raised. "You ever think about competing professionally?" he asked. "I mean real tournaments, sponsored events, big prizes. We got connections. You've got serious talent." Danielle's smile was polite but firm. "Not interested. Are you sure? With your skills?" She cut him off gently. "I didn't come here to prove anything." That was the truth. She wasn't chasing medals anymore. She slid into the seat, closed the door, and started the engine. The old Civic hummed to life. The AC sputtered but eventually kicked in. As she pulled away from the range, she glanced once in the rearview mirror. The building got smaller behind her, and then it disappeared in the heat waves. Danielle Foster didn't need validation, because what she found that day wasn't a win. It was remembrance. The road stretched out ahead of Danielle, long and quiet, just the way she liked it. The trophy rattled slightly in the back seat every time she hit a bump. It didn't matter. She'd probably forget about it in a day or two. Maybe it would end up on a dusty shelf, maybe in a drawer. It wasn't the kind of thing she needed to feel seen. What meant something? That fire inside her, that slow burn that reminded her she was still here, still sharp, still whole in her own quiet way. As she stopped at a red light, her eyes wandered. Across the street, a father crouched next to his daughter, steadying her bicycle. The little girl wobbled as she tried to pedal, nearly tipping over, but the dad caught her in time, both of them laughing like the world couldn't touch them. Danielle watched with a soft smile. Not jealous, just present. Because in that simple moment, she saw something she'd missed for years, life without weight. She tapped her fingers gently against the steering wheel, a rhythm that used to calm her during long waits in faraway places. Places she didn't talk about. Not because she was hiding, but because no one really wanted to hear. They didn't want to know what it meant to wait for orders that didn't come, or how it felt when they did. They didn't want to know about the targets she never missed, or the ones she wasn't supposed to hit, but did anyway. They didn't want the truth about the promises she made, or the ones she couldn't keep. And that was okay, because she wasn't looking to unload it. She carried it like part of her own shadow. Most people only believe what they can see. They believe strength wears boots and yells commands. But Danielle knew better. Real strength isn't loud. It isn't always visible. Sometimes, it's a woman in an old Civic with a rifle case on the back seat and a calm heart that's been through hell and came back quiet. Danielle turned the corner and headed toward home. Nothing fancy waited for her. No medals, no crowds. Just a small apartment with squeaky floors, a coffee mug still in the sink, a half-watered plant on the windowsill, and a paperback on the table, its pages folded, half read. But to her, that was peace. She didn't need anyone to clap for her. She didn't post the score. She didn't take selfies with the trophy. She didn't even tell anyone her past. Because Danielle Foster didn't shoot to impress, she shot to remember. To remind herself that the woman she once was, the sniper, the protector, the steel beneath the silence, wasn't gone. She'd just been resting. Most of the people back at that range would never know what she carried. The missions, the silence, the burden of taking a shot, and the weight that followed it. And maybe that was okay, because Danielle wasn't angry at them. She didn't blame them for judging. They hadn't been trained to see quiet strength. They didn't know how to recognize power that doesn't roar. But maybe, just maybe, the next time they see someone like her walk in with an old rifle and a quiet face, they'll think twice before laughing. Because real strength? It doesn't ask for attention. It doesn't need permission. It shows up, takes the shot, and walks away. As the afternoon sun dipped lower, casting shadows across her dashboard, Danielle let out a slow breath. She tapped her fingers again on the wheel, calm, steady.